Hello, and welcome to Talk.Therapy.Heal, a dynamic and engaging show that endeavors to shatter the many stigmas surrounding mental health and therapy. Talk.Therapy.Heal is a collective of licensed counselors, therapists, and life coaches unique in areas of specialization, expertise, and experience. Through the art of curated, genuine, compassionate conversation, we get to the deep things. We are so excited you chose to begin your healing journey with us. Tune in to Talk Therapy Heal. Hello, and welcome to Talk Therapy Heal, where we are a group of dynamic counselors, social workers, and therapists coming together just to have a conversation about the tough things in life. Not only that, we're here to give you strategies, tools, and skills on how to live a healed life. Join us today.
Hi, I'm Kenya.
Welcome, I'm Rachel.
Hey, Larisha.
Hey, now I'm Nikki.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shan, and thank you for joining us, like Larissa said, for another show of Talk Therapy Heal. Now, we know that we have been in our relationship series. We are going to continue that series. However, for the next, what would y'all say, couple of episodes?
Mm-hmm.
For the next couple of episodes, because we are counselors of color, if you will, we are going to focus on Black History Month here in the United States of America. So first, before we kind of dig into everything, we want to share this disclaimer. We will be discussing sensitive topics related to slavery, race, mental health, and the Willie Lynch letter, a document often referenced in discussion of racial oppression, though its origins are debated. This conversation aims to explore history and promote healing. Listener discretion is advised, and if you need support, consider reaching out to a mental health professional. Also want to add, if you feel that it's a little much for you, please, click off or don't even watch. And like they said, reach out to a mental health professional. Now, to kind of give a little background, a lot of those in the United States of America are not aware of the Willie Lynch letter, also referred to as the making of a slave. So just to kind of, and I don't know if we will eventually say, hey, if we ever heard of it before or how we heard of it, but just to give a little background, if you will, I'm reading the beginning parts of, and there is a book. So we encourage you, if you never heard of it, to go and read it. And then I'll kind of softly explain how this kind of came to be, if you will, and our show. So before we get into it, we're going to be discussing how it all started. How it all started. And yes, we will be speaking about mental health. The Willie Lynch letter. This speech was said to have been delivered by Willie Lynch on the bank of the James River in the colony of Virginia in 1712. Lynch was a British slave owner in the West Indies. He was invited to the colony of Virginia in 1712 to teach his methods to slave owners there. What we would like to share, and the history and the background of some things, and it'll make sense as we go along. And what we did not want to do is get into the meat of this. If you're curious, we encourage you to read it for yourself, but let us understand that it is very deep, is very dark, and a lot of demeaning activity took place. Okay. Now, at the end of this book, when he delivered his address to slave owners, alleged, let me say that because, people get upset and try to sue nowadays, but alleged to the slave owners, he shared with them if they followed his methods to the T. Now, mind you, this is 1712, that the slaves will continue to follow or act out in this way or perform in this way for 400 plus years. Okay. So we just kind of wanted to set that up. Again, this is going to be deep. And to give like a little soft explanation, we had conversation and noticed that with some of our clients, And I'll speak specifically for myself because, I want to be clear and, but seeing the same rooted problems, the same rooted problems. I have read this letter. I've listened to the actual reading of it, and I will let you know it's very tough. It's very, very tough. So when it comes to mental health and asking the questions, and I'll make it make sense in saying this because we don't want to get too far off anyone's heads. Those who are considered African Americans in the United States, because the what would you say, title, label has changed throughout the years. It's been everything. Now we're African Americans. But those who are African Americans, we often say this. Isn't it interesting that we was raised in the same house at different addresses?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning we say the same thing. Sometimes we act the same way. Mannerisms are the same. Of course, cultural beliefs and different things like that as other people. But it's some things that we can do and say, and no one has ever gave thought to, why do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we say that? Why do we think that has to do with mental health? Why do we think the way that we do?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go and you read this, because not wanting to give credit, it is very disgusting. It is very hurtful, but it may provide you insight as to that question that we have all asked. Why, no matter if we're from the North, the South, the East, the West, the Midwest, why we think, act, and our mannerisms are so much alike. This may have had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And I think what we have to do is we have to take a long road back in history. There was an individual by the name of Galt back in 1848. He hypothesized that individuals who were African American, who were enslaved, could not develop behavioral health or mental health issues for the sole fact that they didn't own property, they didn't sell anything, they weren't merchants and things of that nature, having to deal with money. Because at that time, those were the stressors that drove people to have behavioral health problems. So because enslaved African Americans didn't own anything, they believe that they cannot develop any problems when it comes to behavioral health or mental health.
Wow. Mhm. Okay, so y'all starting already.
Yeah, we got to get in there.
Hmm. We were not able to develop mental health or behavioral health. Right. Coming from having been ripped from your country, forced to come across waters, uncharted territories that you had no idea about, watching your loved ones, your friends, other people just in general die
Mm-hmm.
as you traveled over, being forced into small, compact areas with no food, no water, no way to release yourself. To come to a country where you, again, have no idea where you are, what is to come, what is going to happen to you, to be ripped away from your family members, even more so there, to be placed in different places or sent different places, to be forced into a labor force and whipped when you don't perform at the level that they want you to perform at, to work tirelessly all day and night, then to be fed scraps if you got scraps. You didn't develop behavioral health issues?
Right.
And not only that, I also want to say that in the midst of all of that was going on, as time developed, there were things that were done to individuals in the African American community once they started to realize that there could be some behavioral health problems, and how those individuals were treated probably did more harm than good. I want to say in the 30s, 40s, 50s, they would do the process of what they call limbotomy, where they would actually go in and take out a portion of the brain. There were things that went on in the United States where African American males were sterilized. We know about a lot of the things, I hope I'm remembering this correctly, where they were doing the so-called vaccinations in the South and the Tuskegee Airmen, all of that. So I'm going to say all that to say this. People in general, I don't care if you're African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, European, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings and we all are susceptible to the exact same thing. And when the individual has endured a little bit more than someone else, then the propensity for that individual to develop some behavioral health issues could easily be there. So I think as we have this conversation on tonight, that we really dig deep into that and see how some of the things that may have been done way back then in history has traveled the historical timeline and is caught up to the African American male, female, their children, even today as we speak, because of what was done many years ago.
So because I know a lot of people will probably start watching this and say, well, why everybody always got to go back to slavery? Why you got to always talk about slavery? And we're talking about how it all started. So we're talking about how intergenerational trauma, also known as transgenerational trauma, can affect you emotionally, psychologically, and sometimes those physical wounds that are passed down from one generation to the next. So yes, it started there. It has to have an origin, right? A place of beginning. So when we think about trauma, it often stems from systemic oppression, slavery, discrimination, and continued racial injustices, which have left lasting scars within families and communities. So this thing traveled from the origin, I guess if you want to say that slavery being that origin place all the way down and continues even today. So yes, slavery it's that piece as to why you think or behave in the way that you do today, and you don't know where it comes from. Like you were saying earlier with how families can grow up in the same house but have different addresses. There's different things that have been passed down. You know, and you could have, like, I didn't grow up with Larisha. I didn't grow up with Rachel, but we share similarities in our stories on how things have impacted us because of our people, what happened to our people. So I just wanted to say that because I know a lot of times people will question that. Everybody always want to take it back to slavery and be the victim. This is not about being a victim. This is about discussing why you are the way that you are, how it all really started for you, hopefully to give you a better understanding on, okay, this is how it started. What can I do to, I guess, overcome it?
Okay.
So, I'm just sitting here thinking about just the title alone, The Making of a Slave. So then I go to the word slavery, I go to the word slave, and there's multiple meanings. But one is, we know it's a person who's forced to work for and obey another person, and it's considered to be their property. So just think about the enslavement of you not looking at yourself as a human. You don't have worthiness. You're seen as property. The other word or definition, work excessively hard, is subject to control by another. Another one, this is the one I saw. A person who is excessively dependent upon or controlled by something. So I hear that you could be a slave to many things. Many things. Many. And so, that mentality being carried over, and I think we're going to get into that too, that mentality of being, oh my God, a slave in one area, forced to do something. Now I become a slave to something else that is not directly related to that place or that thing of origin, but now I'm a slave to something or many things.
Yep.
What are some things that somebody can be a slave to?
Money.
Yeah.
Work.
Work. Mm-hmm.
mindsets,
Yes.
ways of being,
Mm. Status.
status.
Yeah. Culture. Whoa.
Especially when you do not know your identity.
Hmm.
And I will say for me, because I don't want to, some of the things that we mentioned throughout the show, and we're not going to rush through it. As you can see, it's heavy. I will refer to things. So if something is mentioned to them or mentioned by them, I will refer to some things because we always speak about the root
Mm-hmm.
in the Willie Lynch letter. That kind of solidifies why we brought it up when it comes to mindset, even though Willie Lynch was educating the slave owners on how to make the making of a slave.
Like, make someone oppressed.
Right.
Yes.
And then I want to add this before we get too deep, because I often hear this because it was something that you had made mention about. Why are we talking about slavery? Because let's make this a teachable moment for those of us that are African Americans in the United States and also those who are not. The hope would be that we would learn. We've had professors that said, wow, that are Caucasian. Wow, we never knew that this was the things that you all deal with, and they were willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So we ask, instead of you debating in the comment section, because maybe it's a little too heavy for you, go on to another channel, or be willing to learn. Okay. Because one thing that is often repeated, and I feel, even though that I was not directly enslaved, but our ancestors were, that is said in the United States that I feel need to be stopped immediately, is that you were not a slave, and why are you all not over it yet?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You are not a slave. Why are you all not over it? Why are you all keep talking about it? And if it wasn't important, why is it currently being erased in the United States?
But wait, hold on. I just want to pause you because you said
I'm that one. I'm that one.
if you're not a slave, you're not a slave. Why are you still worried, or why are you still talking
Why are you
about
not
it?
over it? Mm-hmm.
How can you overcome something when it continues?
Very, very well. Very well said.
We continue racial injustices where people are wanting to enslave you.
Mm.
They may not have the power, so to speak, in certain instances to force us into a labor, but it's being done subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't overcome something again that is still continuing.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes what we have to look at, and I know my wife has a lot of stuff that she has to her about the Willie Lynch letters, but there's been a lot of things that have been brought upon African Americans. People don't think it affects us these days, but only thing you have to do is really follow the timeline, follow the trail. I believe there was an experiment that was done at one point. I want to say it was with rats, and they had a way to go through a maze, and there was at the end a door that they could go through. But when they got to that door, they would get shocked. And so they finally got to the point where they knew if we go to that door, we're going to get shot. Those same rats, they had babies. They opened the door, and those babies would not grow through that door.
You were all up and through it.
So you can't say things can't be passed down, from history to generation to generation, because if it's done in animals, it can be done in other individuals as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give a quick rundown of how that may look like. First and foremost, we have to stop the stigma about behavioral health in the African American community with people of color, saying that that doesn't happen to us. If you got a problem like that, you're crazy if you go see a therapist. No, you need to get the help you need so that you can overcome this stigma, overcome that issue that you have, and then move forward and have a higher and a better quality of life. When individuals were slaves during the slave period, think about what Nikki said. We were beaten. Individuals were beaten. They were beaten in front of their children. Now their children are seeing that. They watch somebody get killed, get hung. they saw that. They had to live through that. They lived in fear. They lived in poverty. And for the average person, if you can't run that through your mind to say, how can those terrible things not affect individuals way down the line? Either you're blind to the fact or you're just shutting it out because you don't want to know the truth. The thing that we have to understand is this. When individuals are oppressed, it starts there, and the system is sometimes set up and designed for it to continue to trickle down.
Willie Lynch.
Absolutely. And so what we have to understand is we can't go back to that old way of thinking as African Americans and people of color that, one, the thing that they taught us to do to get past it all was to go back to the Bible and forgive everything that was done and said.
Come on, sir.
One of the things that we can't do is just to say, well, everything we go do, we go pray it away. Prayer without works is dead. The other thing that we have to understand as well is recognizing the fact that just because we're supposed to be strong, independent, and we can endure a lot, that we don't suffer some of the same things that other races suffer. So as a group of Black therapists, I believe God has called us in this format, in this platform, to reach out to a greater level to say, we have to take care of our bodies, take care of our minds at a higher level. And the first thing that we have to do is go back to where it started, at the roots, and then start to kill those weeds.
I want to, because what you got all up until my point.
I did.
I want to make about epigenetics, but I want to explain what he just told you all, what it is and how it, I mean, you showed how it shows up in our life, but to give a little bit, because some people are like, well, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that. Let me help you. And my granddaughter say, let me help you. Let me help you. Epigenetics is the study of how behaviors and environments can cause changes in gene expression. So he was talking about seeing things and then it falling with the rat situation and then with the slaves seeing what they saw. Trauma, particularly repeated or severe trauma, can actually turn on or turn off certain genes. These changes can be passed down to subsequent generations. This means that trauma's impact isn't just emotional or psychological. It can be inherited on a genetic level, affecting how generations respond to stress and vulnerability. That's what you just expressed. That it's what we see or what was done is passed down. If I develop, now I'm anxious or experiencing anxiety because I'm seeing somebody killed, like, oh my God, am I next? Is that going to happen to me? And it just changed the whole dynamic of what my genes are now producing. Either it turns something on or it turns something off. And then when I get impregnated or the man impregnates the woman, because the man also carries genes in the sperm. I need y'all to be educated. The man carries genes within the sperm. He impregnates a woman. That baby now is birthed. She or he now has that same anxious spirit or feeling within them. It passes down. But I want to kind of do not a flip, but kind of give you a little bit of hope in this. Because while trauma can change how genes are expressed, it does not permanently damage them.
Absolutely.
Environmental changes, healthy lifestyle choices, and therapeutic interventions,
Absolutely.
especially along with the most important piece of this, God, it can modify your gene expression in a positive way. So we are acknowledging that all of these things are passed down, but what I feel like is the missing piece with a lot of us in the African American communities is that we don't understand, we don't understand what has been passed down through the genes, and then we don't change our environment or change things up and understand that we can heal from it. Yes, we can heal. And we're not talking about the Willie Lynch letter or slavery as a thing to say, oh my God, we're stuck. No. You can change, but you got to be willing to change. But we want you all to really understand how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, did one of you, because I know you had something.
I was just going to say, just real quick, just a funny but not so funny like example of what was just shared was spankings and disciplining.
You know,
I have that right there.
Oh,
Yes.
passed down. Yes.
Passed down, something that's
Yes.
passed down. And we thought that that's how things had to be.
Oh,
You know what
to
I mean?
get
And
people-
the extension cord, the brooms, the switches off of the trees. We thought that was correction.
Right.
Now we know the scripture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And probably got to study that out. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Amen.
But you know, we don't have to replicate the same behaviors.
But what
You know what I
do
mean?
learn that behavior though? The whippings.
Yeah.
To do what? What was the whippings
To
intended to do?
correct us, to
Punish,
discipline
to
us,
get
to
you back
punish,
in.
to bring us back in line.
And it was also done to some of the strongest people. So if they broke, everybody else was afraid. And so they didn't want that to happen to them. And so if you really look at it, as Shan was talking about it and Nikki was talking about it as well, we didn't all grow up in the same household, but we all know the same stuff. And as you were talking about that played through my mind. Everybody here can probably attest to when you got a spanking, did they not talk to you while they were spanking you?
Oh yeah.
Did I tell you?
You're right.
Which was the exact same thing. And if you have brothers and sisters, they're sitting back there watching that. See what I'm saying?
Lord Jesus. I mean, it's just taking my mind back. And while, like you said, we didn't experience slavery in and of itself, but the residual effects of it has been impacting us for generations. But I'm just thinking about the movies that we've watched and how people are acting out these scenes where they are whooping us and talking at the same, and we carry that same thing out to our children, and we weren't even there.
Yeah.
Wasn't even there. One of the things that's in the letter, I'll just read a part of it. It says, "Don't forget you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. But it's necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us."
And that's powerful. That's powerful because as you look at that, we've all probably seen that growing up through middle school, high school, college, and it still exists today. The whole thing about light skin versus dark skin. You know, now it's going into like what type of hair you got. You know, if you got curly hair, you know, it's that whole thing we see right now where the older men can't say anything to the younger men because of the seed that was planted.
And
The biggest thing, the light versus the dark. Now I'm going to say this, and I only say this because, and I'm sure that's a lot of us up here when I say this. Here in the United States, a lot of quote unquote black, let's speak about history for a little bit. The rule in the United States, and I never understood this, my mom used to always teach me this. Let me just give a little disclaimer. When we used to take the exams, remember you always had to, yes ma'am. Yeah. You always had to bubble in your race. I literally had a person come to my office 2 weeks ago and said, "I'm a Mexican woman. Why do I have to put down that I'm white?" But that's neither here nor there. So I remember asking my mom, because I was the one that always asked questions and probably got whoopings for it. But I was inquisitive. If our family is Indian and we have white in our family, we have black in our family, why do we always have to put black? And my mom used to always say, I know I asked her more than once, because of the one drop rule. So the one drop rule, for those of you who are not young enough to understand or your parents do not know, if you have one drop of quote unquote black in you, you're considered black. Wear the mark black down, right? So with the light versus the dark now, and I brought that up to say this, I haven't heard too many white people do the light versus the dark because they're all white. I'm that one, so pray for me. However, in every other ethnicity, I've heard it amongst Mexicans, I've heard it amongst Puerto Ricans, I've heard it amongst, when we go to the Caribbean island, you go to, it's actually pronounced Hawaii, okay? Because I'm very big on pronouncing things the way that the culture does, not the way that it was renamed. It's light versus dark. And the lighter you are, the better you are. The closer to white that you are. I think sitting at this table, if I use that as an example, I'm probably the lightest one here. And maybe the ring light's helping. But with that being said, it is connected to history. How many of us in this day and age in the 2000s still follow that same dysfunctional model that she just read?
Absolutely.
Now, if I could say one more thing, and I'm hushed for a moment because like they telling me I need to breathe because I get very passionate. I said I was going to connect history because she just connected history. And I did the one drop rule with what she said. Can you just mention something about how we as Black people don't go to therapy? And again, I was we, because what has been kind of indoctrinated in us within our own cultures that we don't go because, and I'm going to keep it honest, we're going to keep it raw because that's what we got to do to get to the root.
Mm-hmm.
We do not go because we are not crazy. That's for white people. How many of y'all heard that?
Mm-hmm.
I fought that. I didn't get the help that I needed. But let's go back. Can you mention the Tuskegee Airmen and that experiment? Many of you all may know or may not know about Sarah Bartman. Have you ever heard about her? She was the African woman with the oversized rear. And the white people put her on exhibit and she had to lay, and I'm not trying to be too graphic, she had to lay on the table. She had to lay with her legs open. They touched her, groped her. They did all the things like she was nothing. I bring that up because that's history to the point that I think parts of her body parts is still on exhibit somewhere in England.
Yeah, I think they finally
returned her back.
Yeah, I think it was, I want to make sure I get this right. I want to say it was on display up until 1974 or something of that nature. And they finally did the burial in 2002.
Yes. And mind you, when this happened, this was years ago. In London, they had her on display, Egypt, all these different things. Shan, why are you bringing this up? Because Tuskegee Airmen, Sarah Bergman, many other instances that has taken place not only around the world, but in the United States, has built distrust in which we spoke about, especially when it comes to, because how many of y'all again have heard, we don't go to the doctors because we don't trust them. That's where a lot of home remedies came from because we treated ourselves. So if you didn't trust the doctors to go to the hospital for your physical needs, it's been greater for mental health. And let's be honest and clear. In our profession, when you learn the history of counselors, it was specifically what? White males. Then it became white females. It probably wasn't until the latter, and I'm talking about latter years, talking about closer to this day and age, that you get to see this, that you get to see a Hispanic female, a Puerto Rican male, as therapists. What I'm saying is you get to see someone that looks like you. And so when it came to the health side of it, something else that was a distrust amongst our community in history was we do not feel pain as Black people. That's still being discussed today. And it was one of my Caucasian coworkers when I worked at a hospital in the central area who was actually a registered nurse, but we were working in capacity as instructors. When this came out, because I'm going to the source, I've always done that. And I asked her, is this true? Because what was said was that this is in the books for the nurses. This is in their books in college. A lot of them haven't probably been removed today for the nursing staff. So I went straight to her because she is a Caucasian female who a sweet person to heart that I could trust to tell me the truth. Is this true? And sitting in our home on the back porch, as we call it, She said, yes, it is. I still have the book. So that's why, even though we encourage Black people to go to counseling, we also have to look at the distrust that's been created. But we still encourage you because this may help break some of the mental bondage and mental slavery that we're in. Okay.
What you are describing is trauma symptoms. Mistrust, hypervigilant, anxiety, emotional suppression, especially like what you're talking about, we don't have pain and all of the things. These are symptoms. A lot of the things that we're experiencing or feeling today is trauma symptoms, things that has been passed down. And you don't, like I said, you were born with anxiety. You didn't know you had anxiety, but then it was even more further fed by what we were seeing and what we were being taught, because we haven't overcome this thing of trauma, really, or this intergenerational trauma. We haven't overcome it yet because it continues to happen. I want to and I want to say thank you to all of you all sitting here. Talk Therapy Heal. This is amazing because what we're doing is creating that safe space.
Yes.
Yeah.
For this conversation. Do people talk about it? I think they do, but I think sometimes when I hear it or see different things, people are coming at it more so in a tone of anger. They're upset. They're mad, rightfully so, right? Like I am not going to take away the fact that you can or should be mad or angry about what took place with your ancestors and even with you now today. Your feelings are valid, but we don't ever really have a safe space to discuss it and not be judged by what we feel and why we feel the way that we feel. I was talking to another therapist the other day, and we were talking about having those safe spaces to be able to really talk about how we feel. And every time a space is created, I feel like it's infiltrated with something else, and we don't have that. It takes away the safety, because you have people who come in there and say, you shouldn't think like that. You shouldn't feel like that. That's wrong. Why are you still harping on that? Get over it. People are so quick to want to rush you through trauma or rush you through what you're feeling. I hope that this space allows you all the opportunity to really feel what you're feeling, understand why you're feeling it, where it comes from, and then what you can do to move forward. Because no, we don't want you to stay there, but we want you to feel it. Because when you dismiss those emotions or dismiss those feelings, they come right back around, and they come open, or they come in many different forms, and you wonder, well, why did I behave like that? Or why I keep doing it? Some people chop it up to, that's just who I am. No, it's not. It's not who you are. It's what happened to you. It's what happened to you. And so this safe space, I feel like it would open, or it should open up, understanding, compassion, and collective healing, because we need to heal. I don't know what y'all are feeling, but just sitting here in this space now, hearing what I'm hearing and feeling what I'm feeling, there's still some things I need to work on, because reading a Willie Lynch letter just pisses me off.
Right.
To know that I'm going to say our people, people were being trained on how to treat me like trash.
Right.
And they're still trying to create that in today's world.
Yeah. And you know what really gets me is I hate when individuals try to, like you say, blow stuff off. Hurry up and get over it. Oh, that was years ago, this, that, and other. But if you look at it and you really do some research, study your history, every other ethnicity that has had some type of tragic events that have happened to them that was brought on by a dictator or a country or whatever the case may be, those individuals have been taken care of from a monetary value, except for the African American community. Now, I will say this, when it comes to the Native Americans, they gave them a lot and said you can put casinos and things of that nature. They gave it to them, but it still ain't turned out in their favor.
It's not.
It's not turned out in their favor. So a lot of things were designed, and as Nikki was saying, it's still being put in place. And we're not trying to call out every other ethnicity to say you're doing something wrong. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is educate people to let them know that when it comes to behavioral health, a lot of times it's people of color. It has been stigmatized. They've avoided it. Care was not provided. And we are at a point now in this day and age where we really need to sit back and think, where did this come from? How has this affected me? And what do I need to do to help myself, and not only myself, but my children? At what point can we get that out of our genes that's been put there? Now, I'm just going to use myself as a quick example. My wife did an extensive study on the background of our family. She found out for me that how I got the name King actually came from a slave owner, but one of my distant relatives picked cotton so well that they called him Joe Cotton. And he ended up coming, I think, from the Georgia route over to Texas. East Texas. My grandparents were farmers. They did a lot of different things. They grew crops, they traded, they moved around from place to place doing different things. And I remember how my grandparents used to have to talk to white people. And I'm just sitting there like, why don't you just say this, that, and other? But it was, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, what would you like for me? And I'm just like, what? So when I got up 10, 11, 12 years old, guess what? I was doing the exact same thing because of what I watched. I was in a school, and I didn't think at that particular time there was a lot of stuff that was going on there. But when I look back over my life, the racism still kind of went down. I never got beat. I wasn't forced to work on a farm or anything of that nature, but the impact of it was still there. As a young African-American male at the age of 13, I made Eagle Scout in my troop there in my hometown. Prior to that, I had a Caucasian male who was quite older than I was. He had to be in his 50s or so. In my board tell me I will do everything I possibly can not to see a Black boy be an Eagle Scout. And I made it anyway. With the help of a lot of individuals, and they were Caucasian, I had to overcome that barrier. But mentally, there was nothing there. I had to carry that. Out of high school, into the military, saw stuff like that in the military. Even now, as I become a counselor and I go to counseling and I talk to counselors, it's still present. So at what point do we have to get society to realize that there's an issue, focus on that issue so that individuals can enhance their qualities of life because we all bleed the same color, which is red?
The prolonged exposure
Yes.
to trauma. I'm hearing the emotions of it, but it doesn't just affect the emotion. It changes the brain structure,
Absolutely.
how you see yourself.
Absolutely.
Ooh. And then it creates the body's stress, creates stress within the body, which is how our body kind of goes into that fight or flight. That central nervous system has not been calmed. It's not at ease, all because of what you're telling yourself.
Absolutely.
And so if I keep saying, and we're talking about prolonged, you keep repeating.
Over and over.
And that's what's happening in our world. We're seeing it over and over and over and over again. And people say, well, why don't you just relax? Wow.
Right.
I can't. If I do, what's going to happen? I don't even know what that feels like. So that we have to get to a place regulating our body regulation, grounding, so that we can come to a place of being able to relax and come out of that fight or flight. I feel like that's been the African-American culture for generation after generation after generation. Survival mode.
Constant. If I can, if you all do not mind, I wanted to add something else because it was something that you mentioned earlier and was talking about re-traumatized, right? So in doing research, what Kenya was mentioning, Joe Cotton was actually his 8th great-grandfather. Joe Cotton and his sister came over on the ship from Africa, and they did end in the Carolinas. And the slave owners did move them here. But this is something that's very interesting. So as I was doing the research, because I initially started with my family, and then he's like, hey, do mine. Okay. We was actually sitting in his mother's house when I was like, oh my God, made the massive discovery and made that connection from East Texas to Africa. So something in me said, because they listed the slave owners' names, and I was like, you know how we are. I was like, I wonder if this family is still prevalent in today's time by the last name that was listed, because whoever did their family's documentation was amazing throughout the history. So from where we are currently sitting right now to where his slave owner's family currently reside, Bryan College Station, is 1 hour and 22 minutes away.
Wow.
So as individuals say, and we're speaking about mental health, get over it. Knowing that we take the back roads, y'all know it, from Central Texas to Houston, we are literally passing through. And I even did the extra step, didn't reach out, and we're not going there, but I did the extra step and I looked up the family name on Facebook. And that's how I found out they migrated from where he's from right on down the way to Bryan College Station. So when people say, like I was saying, get over it, how do you get over so easily? You know, people who's never been through things, and not just slavery. Yeah. Let's go to rape, molestation. Let's go to being abused as a child, abandoned. People like to say get over it because they don't want to deal with the responsibility of the part that they played in it.
Absolutely.
So how do you drive through a place and you're thinking, as you see, welcome to Bryan College Station, this is the now home of the slave owners, but we're supposed to get over it. Yeah. So as y'all see tonight, I'm bringing the fire. I often do this. Been doing it since I was a child. But connecting the dots from Africa to East Texas, and they're saying, wow, because they understand that Bryan College Station is literally right that way.
My daughter was in school at Bryan College Station.
We went down there to check on her.
And she probably went to school with some of the slave owners, but this is the other piece too, to your point. And not that we as people of color, because we do very well, okay? Despite what is said about us, we do very well. We are all educated up in here. Yeah. And this is just a sample. If you go and do, what do we say, statistics and research, we're just a sample study, okay? But with that being said, it's often said that all we want when we speak about things such as being treated fairly and reparations and, you know, having a seat at the table, which, you know, we built it, but anyway, that is. With that being said, I'm being nice. How is it fair? Like Kenya said, when everyone else perceives, but we don't. And to the beginning part, when we were speaking about history, we have to keep in mind this, and this is still in law today. What are we considered? 3/5 of a human. And right now we're in 2025. By the laws of this land, Black people are still considered 3/5 of a human.
Well, I'm sorry. I want to hear from y'all too, but I had this. So where I go to the post office, I ain't gonna tell y'all where it's at, but I typically or will sometimes have conversations with the guy in there who's the owner. So it's a little town or whatever. So he's always asking me where am I sending boxes because I'm sending them to APOs. Or whatever. So we get to talking, and this was before the election and all of the things. And he comes to me and he wants to start talking to me about the Constitution. And so he finds out that I've served in the military or whatever. So he was like, to be honest, you're more patriotic than me. I've never served my country and this, and this. And then he starts talking about on how things are changing. I said, in what world do you live? He said, but they're making changes even to our Constitution. And I didn't have the time. I wish I had time that day, but in my mind, I had time because I was going to go there with him. Because again, if the Constitution is changing, then why am I still considered 3/5 of a person? Oh, but it's changing to grow America. For who?
Who's benefit?
And that's why I said for who? Because it's not for people who look like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got real silent, and I said, you have yourself a good rest of the week. And I walked out. Because you have to be really either naive, or, I won't call them the S word, but you have to really be disconnected for you to think that Constitution serves people who look like us.
Right.
Mhm.
It's ignorance. Not that they're stupid,
Mhm.
right?
It's
But
ignorance.
ignorance means not knowing.
No, but I can't even say he didn't know.
Mm.
Because if you're gonna sit here and try to quote to me what you think the Constitution represents,
Mhm.
that leads me to believe that you at least know something about it. And so, what does it constitute? I agree.
Mhm.
Ignorance is not knowing.
Mhm. But
You did not know. I like that. You knew, and you still had the audacity. I almost used it.
All right. The wherewithal. Let's go with that.
Yeah, you still had the wherewithal, the audacity
Uh-huh.
to say to me that the Constitution benefits both you and I.
Yeah.
In what world, sir?
Yeah. And we see that it doesn't. We see that it doesn't. And once again, how all this affects an individual's behavioral health, it's going to affect that individual personally. Anybody that sees that or goes through it, it affects them. So even when we look at PTSD, they say you can get PTSD just from seeing a traumatic event.
Right.
So if all this stuff happened to our generations ago, and stuff continues to happen in the same light, or they just change it up a little bit, but it's the same thing, why do people not understand how that affects the African American community, people of color, in the exact same way? So I'll give you an example. And I'll use the people on the panel here. Some things we've been told eons ago, and because it started there and they kept it going, it's all the same thing. How many people here are scared of snakes? See, look, yeah. And it may have been the fact that we had an experience with it, but for the most part, we were told.
Yeah,
So-
I've never had an experience with a snake prior to being told I was scared or I should be scared of a snake.
There you go. So fear can be instituted into you, and you carry that on. You'll run right ahead and you'll tell your kids, and they'll tell their kids. Not everybody in the world is scared of snakes. Now, I got to a point, I don't like them, but I ain't scared like I used to be. Now, that came from what I would call reality therapy, because somebody threw one on me and I had to get them off. But things like that are done to individuals in the African American community. We're forced to watch and see it over and over and over again, and they wonder why we develop issues that carry with us for eons on. And for me, I'm just going to be honest. I've had a hard time over the last 10 years or so. Every time you turn the TV on, there's an African American male that's shot. I got my hands up. I ain't doing that. Blah, blah, blah. And what do you think? It's fear. And it passes itself down because I have a son now that has a driver's license, and he comes to me, and every time he gets ready to go somewhere or we're in the car together, okay, Dad, what do I do if a cop pulls me over? I'm like, son, you don't have to worry about anything. And so we went to Houston, and he was getting his, he actually had his permit, and I let him drive back. And we come up to a red light on a lonely country road, and a cop pulls up, and I can see him. I'm like, just calm down. I said, why are you trembling? Dad, there's a cop over there. I said, "Man, he's over there just like we're right here." I said, he's beside you. What ticket can he give you if we're both at a light? And when we took off, I could tell that cop actually tried to stay back a little bit to see if he was going to speed. And I said, just do what you got to do. Speed limit is 30, do 25. When we got up to 45, you do 40. And always go 5 under so they don't have any issues. The cop actually came around and got on the opposite side when we got to the next light, and he's looking and he's like, Dad, I said, hey, you ain't doing nothing wrong, just drive.
Yeah.
But that starts it from there. Now, when he gets to have children, does he go and say, hey, look, when I was with my dad, my mom, during that time frame, all this stuff was happening. Hey, you got to be extremely careful when you're a cop. Why should I have to sit there and explain to my kids what to do when they get pulled over? Put your hands up, keep them up on the steering wheel, let the steering wheel down. Yes, sir. Yes. Why does it have to come to that point? It's because we've seen it so much, and the trauma is being passed down.
Right.
Now, I'm going to say this because I know I've been on the mic for a while, but this is the thing. Sometimes in order to get a person to understand where you're coming from and what you've been through, they've got to see it or they got to experience it. And for a lot of individuals that don't understand trauma that's been done to the African American community, how it affects us from a behavioral health standpoint, the minute something happens to them, it's totally different. is totally different. So why wait till you get to that point to try to understand it? Get on board and visualize and understand what this may do to individuals, and not only get some help for yourself, but encourage other individuals to get the help they need as well.
All right. Okay, y'all. I feel like I ain't heard your voice.
I know, and I'm like,
Your
Rachel,
voice.
yes.
It's a
Oh my
lot.
God. It is a lot. And we are at the end. I want us to end this one with something that would help the community to heal, or how we can foster healing in all of what we heard tonight. We know that we haven't even hit the brunt of everything that we need to talk about. So there will be a part 2, because Kenya just stomped all over my PTSD.
I'm sorry.
The next
I get into it.
session, but it's fine. I'm gonna promise you that's okay. Gotcha. But I feel like just to help the people in closing this one out, and I have something that I want to say about the whole community thing and healing. And so I just wanted to ask all of us if we can provide something that would be like healing, or what they can do to move forward in all of what they just heard tonight. So for me, I would say community healing. Community healing helps to transform individual pain into collective strength. By coming together, people can process trauma more effectively, find hope and solidarity in shared experiences, and work together to create environments that support healing, resilience, and growth. That is my hope for us as we continue to journey through this, that we come together to heal together so that we can move forward together. But what that main point is, unity. We have to unite. As an African American community, we have to unite. That's how we're going to heal.
Yeah, I would just say, kind of piggyback off of that. And I'm giggling to myself because I'm an auntie. So,
Go ahead, TT.
yeah. So, in regards to the community and building that community bond, I think that it's so important for us, talking about relationships too, to turn to the aunties, to turn to the uncles.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Those that may have experienced a lot of the things, you know what I mean, or seen or have vicariously, experienced the things that we're speaking about today. But I say turn to those grandparents, if they're still present. Turn to the uncles, turn to the aunties, the cousins, the older cousins. You know what I mean? Because I feel like there's resilience there, if I could say it like that. So community, unity, reestablishing the bonds with history, because that's what the aunties are, that's what the uncles are, that's what the grandparents are.
Yes.
But I think that we'll able to tap into the resilience, you know what I mean, that our people have. Yeah.
I would say recognize the truth that you are whole. And do not subscribe to the fact that you were born unworthy or there's no worthiness within you because maybe no one told you. We are here. We are your aunties and uncles right here, right now, saying that you were born worthy. You are whole. And so therefore you can show up secure by studying these facts. So you can actually do the opposite of what was passed down from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to end this, and this may sound a little radical, but I've got two things. There's a quote, and I don't know who said this, but basically it says, Black trauma is never given the space to heal because we have to tiptoe around those people's feelings that really hurt us. And along with that, Rich Villadel said this, we are wounded in community and we are healed in community. No way around it. So regardless of what individuals may have said or done, we have to pull together as a community to heal. And that is what we do here at Talk Therapy and Heal.
And y'all, because a 2 or 1, he literally just said what I was going to say because I was going to speak about safe space and
Yes.
community. And if you have been along your healing journey, then be willing to help create a safe space for those who are still struggling, because honestly, no one can really understand us like us.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
good.
true.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's good.
Oh, okay. Thank y'all so much for joining the aunties and uncle here
Yes.
tonight on Talk Therapy Heal. Stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 is coming up. So before we jump over into where y'all get to part 2, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll see y'all next time here on Talk Therapy Heal. Peace and bye.